So for you, with all of these ideas that to a guy like me sound pretty sane and rational, but for someone that lives in San Francisco and you're an online guy, we know online skews young in general. You're talking about video games a lot and a whole bunch of other stuff. Your audience must not be fully on board some of this stuff.
No,
right?
no.
How do you deal with that?
I deal with it the best I can is all I can say. I mean, I think that, first of all, my business partners are very patient because I think that they realize, and what I've realized, which is that we are going to lose some people because of my outspokenness. The other guys don't really care about politics. They don't know much about politics. I'm not even sure they really have much of an ideological bent. I think that they're all pretty central or centrist. But they let me go off on my tangents, and they never tried to shut me up or anything like that. And I get tweets often where they're like, "I'm done with you guys. I'm done. I can't deal with this anymore." And I'm like, "Well, I don't want you anyway." Like if you have such a closed mind that you can't even hear a different side, a totally reasonable side of a different of an argument. I'm not calling for anything crazy. Actually, when people are like, "You're crazy," or "You're alt-right," or whatever, I'm like, what am I saying that's nuts?
Yeah.
So when I see that kind of stuff, I often think that yes, there is a deficit there, but I actually think we bring in way more people because the hidden secret, especially in video games, that I know all too well, is that there are way more conservatives and libertarians in the gaming space than people know. It's just that they're afraid. They'll tell me, but they're afraid to say anything. We're talking about people as high as the leads of studios to all the way down the rung to QA testers and the lowest rung of a video game studio, people in publications and all those kinds of things. The only part of the game spectrum that is almost exclusively liberal is the media, which is what gives this paint, this facade that everything is that way, but it's not. There are plenty of us that play video games. There are plenty of us that use YouTube and like the internet and like Twitter and all those kinds of things. They're just afraid. That's it.
So that's a pretty powerful message right there, because I think we're getting a lot of that right now from the mainstream media in general. I think most people are sort of woke, although that word is a little cliche these days. I think most people are woke to a lot of this stuff, and they're getting more woke every day, but the media has tricked everyone into doing exactly the things that you're talking about. They're so afraid now of being called racist and bigot and all those things that people aren't. You'd watch a video game show and go, uh-oh, somebody said something I don't like, and I don't want to post that on my Facebook feed because then someone will think that, well, one of the 5 guys said something that I don't agree with, and da-da-da-da-da. That's a scary place to be.
Yep, absolutely, and that's why I try to push the envelope as much as possible with some jokes that I tell, or some, not that I'm a comedian, you actually have a common background, I don't, I think I'm unintentionally funny.
I used to be funny a long time ago.
But with the specific situation of our morning show that we do, I do that much less, but we do a morning show on Twitch every day. Every weekday that I started, that was kind of inspired by like Morning Joe and which I actually really enjoy, and like PTI and some of the ESPN stuff because I'm really into sports. So something outside of games. And what I realized was that people kind of like it when you say something inappropriate, or that society in 2017 or 2016 or 2015 deems inappropriate, because I always come out with this, like, I'm not a racist. I'm not a bigot. I'm not a sexist. I don't hate women. I don't hate anybody. Like if you believe that about me, that's your choice. And I remember my father saying something really powerful to me when I was a kid, which was, it's very simple and almost mundane, but if it only matters if you know the truth about yourself. If that's really kind of the shining light. If everyone else thinks something else of you, regardless, you know what's in your heart, and I know what's in my heart. So I'm going to say what I need to say, and I always say, like, I'm not ashamed of being white. I'm not ashamed of being male. I'm not ashamed of being straight. I'm not ashamed of being an American. I'm not ashamed of any of this. Like, I didn't do anything to anyone. Yeah. I live my life. I don't have a ticket to my name. I didn't do anything to you. Like, I treat everyone with respect. I'm a please and thank you kind of guy. I hold doors open for people. I send thank you cards. I do all the, like all the little things, the little kind of pieces that make a person, I think, good and thoughtful. So that's what matters. If you can't take a joke that I make about a Nazi, or you can't take a joke I make that might be a racial joke or something, that's on you. I don't care. Like, that doesn't make me a racist, and that doesn't make me a bigot.
Yeah, and yet we live in a time where you know that over the course of this hour, you could say accidentally one thing that you just slightly, word the wrong way, and then the meme comes out about it, and then 1,000 people tweet it. But I guess your bigger point stands, which is you are not those things, and it is what it is.
Right, exactly, and it's one of those issues. I mean, at the beginning of the show, I said, like, if we're from Long Island, we're genetically advanced, right? Someone's going to think, like, that's a stupid...
That's a fact, though, right?
It is. But it's a flippant kind of thing you say, and you throw it out there, and I'll never think about it again. Yeah, someone out there is going to think, he believes in eugenics. You know, or something like crazy like that. I'm like, no, it's a joke, dude. It's a joke. You know, like I want to loosen things up and shake things up, and just in my small little sphere, in my small little way. I'm an insignificant person. I'm one of the most insignificant people that's ever sat in this chair across from you. I watch this show. You know, you have the Glenn Becks on, you have the Ben Shapiro's on, you have all these big names. I'm a smaller name that's not known for politics, but politics happens to be my biggest passion, way more than video games, and it always has been. I got all these tattoos on my arms when I studied American history.
Maybe we should switch jobs. I'm starting to think, because I should be going back into video games. You could be doing this.
Happy to do that. I wish
Maybe we'll do like a weekly swap or something.
Sure, I love that. But I think that there's, you know, if you look at the Venn diagram of everyone's interests, about gamers, about people that are maybe into film or cinema or into television, there's a political overlap with a lot of people. People have passions and they have kind of leanings, and that should be embraced. If someone leans left or someone even leans socialist or something like that, well, that's perfectly fine. Let's have a reasonable discussion about that.
Yeah.
But this orthodoxy, I'll give you an example. Right after the election, there was a great piece. I want to say it was in Hollywood Reporter or something like that about Steve Bannon, who's, you know, the boogeyman, everyone.
Yeah.
And all I tweeted out was like, I think I tweeted out literally verbatim, this is an interesting piece. What an interesting and smart man. No endorsement of him.
You're going to pay for that one.
Man went to Oxford and Harvard. So some of the best institutions in the entire world, ran a bunch of businesses. I'm not endorsing what he's saying. I don't read Breitbart. I don't care about that kind of stuff. What I'm saying is, what an interesting and smart man.
Yeah.
Period. But this is taken out of context to be like, well, Colin endorses Trump, or Colin, you know, is alt-right, or all these things. I'm like, no, guys, there is plenty of gray area. Why can't we talk about things in such a way that lets us investigate something, that lets us not draw lines in the sand, that's saying one person is bad and one person's good, or this is immediately this or immediately that. Like I said, there's no intellectual curiosity anymore. That brings us to this point where we're butting heads with each other. And I think what I've found, frankly, that I think you found a long time ago, is that I'm an unwitting culture warrior. Like I'm in, you know, like I'm gonna fight.
Yeah, so I love that, obviously. And does that lead you to believe something that Paul Joseph Watson is saying now a lot? And I know even if I had him on the show, which made people think I was a conspiracy theorist and blah, blah, blah.
An interesting man.
I listened to the guy for an hour. Yeah, every time I retweet him, people go completely bananas.
RTs are not endorsements.
Yes, they're not endorsements. Sometimes I do agree with him. Sometimes he says something interesting, whatever it is. But he's been saying lately that conservatism is the new counterculture. Do you buy that?
Yes, I think that's it. I think some people are saying punk rock and stuff like that. I'm like, I don't know. I don't even know enough about the 70s punk scene to even know if that's true or not. But yes, clearly, because the orthodoxy comes from the left. The stagnation of thought comes from the left. All this, you know, the not. A good example is, everyone's like, well, it's my free speech to counter your free speech. And I'm like, of course it is.
Absolutely.
But we all know that the intent on one side is not to counter it, it's to squash it. When I say, when a person says, like, I like Donald Trump, and then another person says, I don't like Donald Trump, well, that's the exercise of equivalent free speech. When someone says, I like Donald Trump, and someone says, you're a bigot and you're Nazi and you're a racist and you should be ashamed of yourself and your entire family shit and your entire state shit and all that kind of stuff, well, that's not free speech. That's actually insulting, that's actually demeaning, that's actually trying to bully someone out of a point of view. And that's not what's happening. What happened at Berkeley, I'm not a Milo fan at all. I've never been. I think he's an interesting dude. I've listened to a lot of his speeches. I think he has some interesting points. It was interesting to watch him kind of fall apart over the last couple of weeks. But you know, I kept saying to people, even before all that stuff came out about him afterwards, where I'm like, if he just went to that speech and there was an empty auditorium and everyone was going about their business and going to class and all that kind of stuff, that would have destroyed him.
Yeah.
You know, but you gave him all this attention, and it heightens them simply because you don't want to have a conversation. And if you think they're so wrong, if you think this point of view is so wrong, then why are you afraid to debate it? It's so strange to me. If you're so powerful, if you're so philosophically right, if you're so educated and intellectual, then what are you so afraid of? That, like,
I guess it's easier to burn shit and tell people to go fuck themselves, which is unfortunately tactics that we're seeing only from one side these days.
Exactly. I mean, I don't like painting necessarily with a broad brush all the time about, well, it's just the left. There's fucking assholes on the right, like terrible people that make all of us look bad. And I'm never going to say the Richard Spencers of the world and all those kinds of guys. Really deplorable kind of points of view, but. You know, I had this personal example of this. There's this guy that's always kind of picking on me in the gaming industry, this really small kind of media guy, that I've kind of just let go. People have pointed out to me over the years, like, oh, this guy's talking shit and blah, 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 in the subtweets or whatever. So eventually I called him out on Twitter. He said something terrible about me. I tweeted on. I'm like, listen, I'll invite you to our Kind of Funny studios. I'll put $2,000 of my own money on the line and give it to a charity of your choice. If you sit down with me for an hour and we'll let an audience, an unbiased audience, decide who wins. We can have an unbiased moderator. I won't know the questions. You won't know the questions. Come, $2,000.
Yeah.
For a charity of choice. You can do the ACLU, the Planned Parenthood, whatever. I don't care.
Can I guess?
Please.
You've never heard from him since?
Oh, no. He never even tweeted back at me. He just continues to subtweet as if he's a courageous warrior.
That's even worse. So
yep.
He doesn't even acknowledge the challenge and then keeps doing his thing.
Coward.
Wow.
They're called cowards.
Yeah, that's a real coward.
Yeah, and here I am, my face in a chair, talking to a person that I might not agree with about everything, although we do agree with a lot of things, putting myself out there in such a way like, I believe in this stuff. I'm going to fight you on this stuff if I have to, and at least we can have a debate, and we can probably be friends afterwards as well. I know plenty of people on the far left end of the spectrum. I went to Northeastern University, which is a very liberal Boston private college. I was the farthest right thing in the world. I mean, when I was in 2002, 2003, 2004, I was George Bush and war in Iraq and all those kinds of things, and I was wrong about that stuff. I was totally wrong about that, and I'll admit that now. But I wasn't afraid to stand up in my American history classes. I studied American history. I wasn't afraid of standing up and being like, but what about this? What about this? Challenging people. Some people in my classes hated me, but a lot of people I actually became great friends with that were like, well, I'd never thought about that perspective, or thank you for sharing that perspective, and what an interesting thing. My favorite historian is Howard Zinn, who history people know is a far left, considered to some people a loon. And I think his People's History of the United States of America is a must-read account of American history that you won't read in, say, a Henry Adams book or a Gordon Wood book, because I like to be challenged like that. So when people like to just live in their little bubble, in their little echo chamber, and they're so scared of anyone else and anyone else's opinions, that only says to me that you're easy to beat and that your ideas suck. Because if they didn't, then you wouldn't be afraid to sit in a chair across from me or a table across from me and debate me on that issue.
I'm curious, have you lost any friends in the course of the last year and a half or so?
Yes.
Because a lot of people, I know I lost a lot of friends, not my choice. I found some better friends, that's all right. But so you lost some friends in the course.
Definitely. And I've lost, I think not even, I've definitely lost friends, but I think I've lost respect from some people too, that think that I'm, I used the word before, but that I'm flippant. I think a lot of people that know me personally, I'm friends with some, like I said, games media is pretty exclusively left wing. I'm by far the most prominent conservative in old school games media. There are people on YouTube that are way bigger than me.
Right.
But I think people think often that, how dare you say this? It's not a matter of like, well, I know Colin. I've broken bread with Colin. I've gone on trips with Colin. I know Colin's a good guy, but how dare you? Like kind of more something like that. And I've had private conversations, and I've had things like this. I mean, the thing that bothers me so much, Dave, is that with the thing with the coward we were talking about on Twitter some weeks ago, I got all sorts of messages from people being like, "What the fuck's this guy's problem? This guy's insane. This guy's a loser." No one said it publicly though. Yeah. Because they didn't want to come, on the side of someone that, well, ideologically we might have some disagreements. They didn't want to protect the person that they've known for years publicly, because that might make them look bad. I mean, that was my interpretation of it, but that didn't stop them from DMing me or texting me or emailing me.
Yeah, and of course, that's an incredible piece of cowardice, and it also goes against the advice that your dad gave you a long time ago about you have to know what's in your heart. So if they don't know exactly what's in their heart, they won't put themselves on the line to defend you, even if they know that you're a totally honorable person and just saying what you believe and all that, whether they agree with you or not.
Exactly, and I try not to hold it against them, because it is scary. Like, the gaming industry is an incredibly orthodox kind of thing from the outside perspective, because, again, of the illustration of the media based on all of this kind of stuff. The fact is that, I worked with a staff of many people, 20, 25 people on the editorial staff when I was senior editor. And I don't know that any of the other people would have ever voted Republican or done anything like that, and that's fine. But that goes to show you, like, not just liberals or Bernie Sanders fans or Hillary Clinton fans play video games, but these people don't feel like they have a voice. Now, I thought the whole GamerGate thing was absurd, and I didn't get involved in that at all. Like, I hate both sides of that argument, because it became very abusive. It's exactly what we're talking about. Like, there's no reason for this to just sink to this incredibly dire level of people just disrespecting each other and hurting each other, and that's not what I'm about.
Yeah. Wait, let's pause for a second. So for the people that don't know anything about GamerGate, I've talked about it a little bit. Can you give me like a 30-second, just very base recap that I know will get everyone angry at you no matter what you say? Just because I think there's some relevance to GamerGate and what's happening in mainstream media right now.
My interpretation of it, if you actually even look on Twitter, like, I never once talked about it. I'm just like, I don't want anything to do with this. My interpretation of it, and I think that it's like one of these things that everyone will have a different interpretation of it, as you said, is there seemed to become this overt emphasis on so-called social justice, or so-called like forced diversity or gender diversity or whatever in games, of people complaining that there were too many white men as a protagonist in a video game or whatever. This coupled with some, I think, kind of strange articles coming out from fringe media outlets that kind of rallied up people's anger about these kinds of things. And I think quickly it wasn't about anything. Quickly, I think it was just a complete abject culture war between two sides that I think were. I remember watching it. I would go on Twitter and look at the hashtag every day in like 2014, late 2014, early 2015, and kind of just see sometimes because I was afraid that they were going to turn their cannons on me. And you never know, like when someone turns on you, like what could happen or whatever. And I just looked at this and I was like, this is fucking insane. Like this is so crazy. Like, why are people so mean to each other? Why are people being so abusive to each other, saying these terrible things? I would never say something like that. One of the things that I try to attack ideas, and if you're a politician or something, I'll attack you, but I will never go after an individual on Twitter or something like that, unless they go after me first, in which case I'll defend myself. And I didn't like how personal that whole thing became. So that's a really bad explanation of it. I mean, I hated seeing that, and I walked away having no respect for both sides, to be honest.
Yeah, but do you see the trends of that trickling up to mainstream now? Because I really see it happening between not only just a guy like Milo who trolled the world and now it's blown up in his face, and I suspect there will be a return of Milo at some point.
I suspect so.
But even what happened with the Wall Street Journal attacking PewDiePie last week, like all of this stuff, I sense like the internet people becoming too powerful, and now the mainstream is going to crack down on them because guys like you and all these other people are gaining real audiences that the mainstream no longer has.
Yeah, I mean, and you're another huge component that's much bigger than I am, because they're dying. They're gone. I was talking with your makeup artist before I came on, and we were watching CNN, and I was saying, like, she was saying, who watches this shit?
It seems ridiculous. Doesn't it seem ridiculous?
Yeah, and I'm like, well, if you look at the Nielsen ratings, maybe 150,000 people are watching this right now. It's nothing. Dave Rubin's videos will get more views than that, today. No. And to me, they're scared, and I don't blame them. I'd be scared too if I was definitely going to die. So it's not a matter of it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. I was remarking that there was a Wall Street Journal article that I retweeted yesterday about how the trends are showing that TV viewership per minute by minute in the United States per month is now being eclipsed by YouTube. In other words, people are watching more YouTube than they are television by minute per capita. And I'm like, well, the dice cast is over. So now it's a matter of how this happens, and I'd be scared too. It reminds me, we used to have this old argument in video game media. I started writing about games professionally in 2002 when I was 18, when I was a freshman in college. And we used to talk about how we took so much pride in killing the magazines. We killed them. We absolutely killed them. And well, now YouTube's going to kill them. And that's the way. And it's not just YouTube. It can be any platform. But Twitter, Facebook, just using those things. I post a political message on Facebook. It gets circulated a few thousand times. Well, that's pretty powerful stuff. That's probably getting circulated more than some of these fringe MSNBC shows that are on at 2 in the afternoon that no one really cares about. That are playing in a bar somewhere.
Right. Well, that's what I was thinking during this whole PewDiePie thing, as Wall Street Journal's turning on him. The guy, I don't even know his work that well. I know he does some silly videos and he does video game stuff and all that. But this guy has something like 9 million Twitter followers. I have no idea how many YouTube people. Do you have any idea?
It's 55 million.
55 million subscribers.
I think he's something like 20 million ahead of the next person.
Right, so think about that. If this guy has 55 million subscribers, we're going to crack 400,000 next week.
Congratulations.
So, thank you very much, although that's real shit compared to this PewDiePie. But the point is that by the Wall Street Journal going after him, it's only a win for them, even though he's obviously not a Nazi, and I have no reason to believe he's a racist, and maybe he made a bad joke. You can argue whether it was in poor taste or whatever. I don't even think it was that. But it's only a win for them to go after him because they know they're going to get clicks off him. So it's like, we've created this monster now where they need these people who have made them irrelevant so that they can grasp their last bit of relevance.
Yeah, they call it death throws. And
they're in the death throws.
Yeah, and it's what I was so fascinated about with the PewDiePie thing, I didn't think what he did was necessarily in good taste, and like I don't know him personally. I've had some private correspondence with him, in I think a DM or something, and we've tweeted back and forth a couple times. But he's a big deal. By the way, he makes like $15 million a year. So this is a guy that is well financially eclipsing a lot what a person in a newsroom would make, and there's some jealousy there, I think, absolutely. And jealousy is an innate primal thing. Like I don't castigate anyone for being like, I wish I was that, But it's about how you act when you're in those situations. And these are people that reaped what they sowed You know, I'm not saying that anyone should be abusive to anyone. I'm not saying I would never do something like that. But what the hell did you expect? Like, you didn't know what you were doing. First of all, they dishonestly portrayed what he was doing.
Right.
And then the big surprise was that all YouTubers, from all big YouTubers, prominent YouTubers that had nothing to do with video games, were all rallying to his cause. And the reason that is, and including me, is because like we want the media to die because they don't serve a function or a purpose in 2017 anymore.